Hey guys, welcome back to another fabulous episode of the Balanced Boss Mom podcast. Today we're diving into an important and overlooked conversation, what it means to balance entrepreneurship, partnership, and parenthood, especially from the perspective of dads. I am so excited to have this dad on my podcast today. His name is Thomas. Thomas is a coach for dadpreneurs, helping fathers build thriving businesses without losing connection with their families or themselves. He brings such a unique perspective of entrepreneurship and fatherhood, and I cannot wait to get into this conversation. By the end of today's episode, you'll walk away with practical insights, inspiration, and some real talk about what it really takes to succeed as a dadpreneur. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Thomas to the podcast.
Hi, Erica. How are you?
I am doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Truly blessed.
So let's get this started. Let's start from the beginning of the beginning,
Okay.
before the pre-dadpreneur era. We
Yeah.
got mompreneur, so we got dadpreneur. So I want to know a little bit about sharing your journey with us, what inspired you about being a coach specifically to dadpreneurs, a little bit about your background.
Yeah. I mean, this whole story could be its own episode. So I'll be as succinct as I possibly can. But I've been coaching for over 16 years. And so back in 2009, I was out at a bar in Austin, Texas, and a buddy of mine wanted me to help him meet a woman who he thought was really attractive. And so I bartered with him and he offered to pay for all my drinks if he actually got a date with her. And so I did that. He got a date, I got drinks. And I thought to myself, wow, like maybe I can teach men how to communicate and have the confidence to meet women and build a connection. So that's
Mm-hmm.
when the professional wingman was born. And that was the whole business, to go out with my clients and see in real time what was preventing them from making romantic connections and then helping them get there.
Okay.
So fast forward many years, I got to the point where responsible for over 400 marriages and engagements, hundreds of
Nice.
relationships. Kids are around because of the work that I was doing. And I got married. This was in 2014. And in 2014, I'm peaking and realizing that there was still a little bit of an emptiness inside of me, even though I basically created the ideal life. I mean, I'm traveling and
Mm-hmm.
clients are flying me out. I'm somewhat of a known person, making money, got married to the person of my dreams. Like I'm supposedly on cloud nine, but I just felt this, I don't know, this darkness, this heaviness around like, what does all this mean? I'm building a life, but for what? And am I really building it for me, or am I building it for what I think other people want from me?
Okay.
And that struggle led me through a dark path that involved, alcohol and drug abuse, and starting to just completely just destroy myself over time. And a
Mm.
couple years later, my wife was pregnant and I realized I was going to be a dad, which was something I've always wanted to be since, I don't know, my teenage years. I was thinking about it. And at the same time, I always talk about this as like my worst, best day of my life, because obviously being a dad was my ultimate dream, but then it was also
Mm-hmm.
the death of this identity that I created that I called the wingman. And it
Mm.
accelerated the struggle of my feelings of depression and escapism and drugs and alcohol. And it all came to blows where I totally hit my rock bottom, just went too far in my abuse of all of that. And by the grace of God, I woke up that next day and the desire, the obsession to escape and to do those things just went away.
Oh, good.
And thank you. And while that was great, definitely great, I was also
Mm-hmm.
so scared. I was scared out of my mind because I didn't know how to live without having to escape my life. So I had to reset and relearn how to be a present father, how to be present as a husband, which I got my first lesson in that, which is like, just because I now become a dad doesn't mean I stop being a husband. So how do you maintain being a husband? And now, as who I am today, as a sober man, how do I build a business that's in alignment with who I am today? And so took a long time, many years. Just for the record, I've been sober for 6+ years. So in that journey,
Awesome.
I've had to go through different iterations of rediscovering myself and how
Mm-hmm.
that translates to the work that I do. I never wanted to stop coaching, but I know I didn't want to help single men date forever, because I'm no longer that man. I'm now a
Mm-hmm.
father, with married and have a business. And I noticed that the clients that were coming back to me after I helped them get married, they wanted to work on other things in their lives. They wanted to work on making sure that their marriages stay strong. A lot of them were entrepreneurs or had businesses or service-based positions where they needed to be more front facing. And so how do they integrate being a
Okay.
high performer at work while also being present at home as a dad and as a husband? And so that really resonated with me because that was the struggle that I had to go through. And I had to figure out, okay, like, what's my role here? And after going through many iterations, once again, understanding different principles of life. And so in one past life, I was a semi pro gamer. And I learned game principles and how to apply them to life. And then I took the success that I created in my first business, took those principles, started to apply them into different areas of my life. And then I just started to see patterns where, wow, like principles in one area, they work in other areas, and we're often taught or to believe that that's not true, that we should compartmentalize everything. And this idea of work life balance is something that we need to focus on. And I realized firsthand that that was an absolute lie. It is a total marketed
You just
package.
just said a word that I have been saying on just about every episode of my podcast that I
Mm,
want to be deleted for the rest of my life, and it's the work-life balance.
absolutely. It is
I
the
want
ultimate
that to
marketing
be
lie.
deleted so bad because it doesn't exist.
No,
It's a
it doesn't.
word that captures, just like I said, I do believe we talked about it on Amy's podcast, where the work-life balance is a word to catch the employer to come in and say, "Oh, this job is fit for you and it's gonna fit for your schedule." But then come to find out when you work that shift or you begin to do that training, you realize it's not a work-life balance that you have received, that you wanted.
No. And there's something else that's there that I know that people are going after. And I'm sure we'll talk about this in the podcast for sure. Right. But once I knew that that
Mhm.
was a lie being given, I knew that I needed to do something else. I needed to do something different about it. So I decided, you know what? God's blessed me with this gift where I can see the principles that people use to create success in different areas of their lives. And if I can show them how that same principle can work in non-conventional areas, meaning principles that don't really make sense to apply in this particular area. If you could take that principle and apply it and work it, it's going to dramatically change your life. So imagine the idea of using game principles in your marriage or using business principles with your kids, right? Like
Mm,
they should work. So
they should.
decided to really modify and develop my methodology around these principles and then use them to support these dads. And it's been the most rewarding and fulfilling experience of my life because I now realize I'm not just responsible for serving the man who's there in front of me. I'm also responsible for serving the family behind him. So the wife and the kids. And, as you and I both know, our kids learn through watching,
Yeah,
more things are caught than taught. And so if I
yeah.
can instill these things and make the dads aware of these principles that they can live by just living it, they'll rub off on their kids. And that's the legacy that they're going to end up leaving behind, not what they actually leave behind when they quote unquote die. Their legacy is living right there next to them. And they can carry that on through the things that they learn and develop and be that dad, be that husband that they know they can be, just like they are in their business.
I have somebody in mind that I can my spouse, yeah, I can refer
Yeah,
him, yeah. So,
I got him. I got him.
yeah, I think he conversate you guys have the conversations, I think it would be 100%. He's a Cowboys fan, but we'll talk about that at
That's
a
okay. It's
later.
all right. I'll let
Sorry,
that pass.
Cowboys. Sorry, Cowboys fans. I had to throw it out there, but my apologies. So I like how you gotten inspired by becoming a coach for dadpreneurs, and that's really awesome. So, what were some challenges you personally faced, both as being, are you a girl dad?
Yes. I have an
You're a girl
eight-year-old
dad.
daughter. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, what personal challenges that you faced, both being that girl dad and tying in that entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So, when you're an entrepreneur, a lot of the times you are responsible for the income that comes in. And this is the part where the work-life balance gets dismantled because there's constant pressure on any entrepreneur, but I would say in this context, a dad who's trying to do their thing, that they need to be in all places either at once
Hmm.
or equally distributed for it to work. And that's just not true. We have seasons of what I call focus. And there's some seasons when we need to be dialed in our business because that's what calls for it. And then there's other seasons where we really need to be present for our kids or really need to be present for our wives because the season calls for it. And we have this belief that because we're present more in one area that the other's going to suffer, but that's not true. Quality of time like surpasses quantity of time every single day. And I have so much proof from so many clients that actually show this to be true because
Hmm.
we as human beings have the innate ability to be able to rise to the occasion even under the strictest of containers, right? If we were given
Right.
a great example would be like at the time of this recording is Labor Day weekend, right? And so
Hmm.
many people will take Friday off knowing that they have Monday off, which means they have back to back 4-day weeks. Well, we know because we have these 4-day weeks, we can put 5 days of work in those 4 days. So
Right.
we have an
Yeah. We can
ability to do that,
compact that.
right? Well, kids don't know time. Most like younger kids don't know time. So 15 minutes, right? Which is, I calculate it's 1% of our day. If we can give 1% of our day of like undivided attention where we are just immersed in their world, that for them feels like an eternity. And we can give our child an eternity every single day. And
Hmm.
so when you start to think about this from that lens, you start to see now possibilities of where that principle can be applied in other areas, such as, well, if I can give my wife 1% of my week of undivided attention, which is the equivalent of like going on a date with her, that's 2.5 hours of dedicated time that you can give your wife every single week.
Hmm.
Right? We apply this to business. So I don't even have to talk about it. If you're a dadpreneur, you understand how this applies in business. So I don't even have to tell you that. Right. But
Right.
it's examples like this that I had to figure out because I was just so scattered trying to provide, trying to protect, trying to preserve all these things that were going on. And I realized the solution to all of it was actually just presence, being where I was, focus on what I was doing, and not allowing the guilt of not being somewhere else to create the restriction or the resistance in my ability to perform at the thing I was doing right then and there.
I like that. And so I like how you use the keyword um, being present because you don't often get that time back in
Yep.
reference to being present oftentimes. And I love your story, by the way. So at what point did you realize this wasn't just a struggle anymore, but it was something that many dads need support with? In reference, I know most dads, I know we're going to get it into it about mental health for dads a little bit later on in our episode today. But when did you learn that it wasn't a struggle anymore and it was just something that dads really need support?
Yeah. So when I'll start with me and then I'll branch it out, right? So when I realized that like I was taking on willingly so much, but it felt unsustainable as I knew if I was going to grow my business and grow my presence with my family, more was going to be asked of me naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a sense that, okay, like this needs to be sustainable. If I'm going to continue to grow these areas of my life, it needs to be sustainable. And I remember bringing it up with my wife and it was the first time I actually just openly just shared with her like my what I noticed, my awareness, my concerns about this. And it gave her an opportunity to actually see a little bit inside my mind because to her, like she's not seeing the things that I'm seeing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Or
don't blame
feeling the
her,
way
right?
that you feel or how you feel mentally in that throughout that day. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, totally get it.
Exactly, right? Because like as a man, you just naturally just carry a lot of pressure. You don't know if you're doing good enough. You don't know if you're providing enough. You don't know if you're that role model for your kids or enough of it. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're constantly questioning yourself, right? Which will lead into the mental health aspect. But just sharing all of those things with my wife just opened the door for her to see how much this matters to me. Because if she didn't hear that and she just saw me just grinding and hustling and being exhausted, but trying to continue to bedtime stories to my daughter and trying to connect with my wife after, my daughter goes to bed, like she's only seeing those things and not really understanding like where it's coming from. And she might just see an exhausted dad who comes off disconnected, but really it's like
Hmm.
the way the world feels like it's on top of me.
Like the world is weighing on your shoulders and you're just trying to get an outlet to release, and your wife is
Yeah,
that peace for you. So I get it. Yeah.
totally. And I wasn't sure if she was going to be that piece because
Mm.
I think oftentimes for men, we feel more exposed when we are sharing in that way because there is a concern that it might be thrown back in our face or we might get hurt with it, used to be, later on
But
at a future date. It's just in our minds, you know?
can you answer me this though? And I've
Yeah.
had a hard time because I want to learn this from a dad's perspective. Why not take the initiative to be um expressing your feelings more out to, if your significant other is your safe space, you know? Why is it very
Well,
hard? And I've been trying to figure this out for quite some time. Why is it hard for men to just say, you know what? Women vomit. We just pretty much vomit our
yeah.
feelings and be like, hey, had a bad day. The kids are running me around. Work has stressed me. Everything's out on the table. So if it's 50-50 in a relationship or 50-50 in a partnership, I feel like the dad should be able to have that safe space to just say, you know what, today is not my day. But I get what you're saying, where
Mhm,
you might feel like you would get that lashback or get that not reciprocated back to you. So
mhm.
I'd still try to find ways, just for example, with my spouse, I still try to find ways to be like, I see it all over your face. Something is bothering you, and you're not
Yeah.
saying what's bothering you. And then it drives me
Yeah.
crazy because I'm like, say what's on your chest. Just say it. Just say you're having a bad day. But then he's like, not going to do it. Nope, not going to say it. I'm not having a
So
bad
Erica,
day.
this
And
is such
it
a good
drives me
example.
crazy.
And you're not alone. This is a very typical example of the dynamic inside of a relationship like this, right?
Hmm.
And for the record, there's nothing particularly wrong with how either of you are looking at it because this is what you were taught, right?
Hmm.
Women oftentimes are taught to share with other women because other women are safe to share. When you have a nice community of women,
Hmm.
where you can share these things and then you get the feedback from the women of support, right? Then you
Hmm.
become more comfortable being able to do that. So it just becomes natural for you based on just the immersive experience of being around other women and communities of women for you to share like that. It is the complete opposite for men. Men are not taught that it's safe to share their emotions. Men are not taught to seek brotherhood and have a brotherhood that has structure where it is safe for them to share these type of feelings, right? It's
Okay.
actually the opposite. By not sharing feelings, what you're going through, by not sharing and letting those things be expressed, that is supposed to be a sign of strength. Because that is what's been taught to us, not
Hmm.
only are we not taught to express ourselves, we're actually not taught how to express ourselves. We're not taught the words to use to express ourselves. So I call it emotional literacy, right? Like we don't have the level of emotional literacy to even put words to our feelings, right? Of
Okay.
what we're experiencing. And then because we don't have a lot of experience around expressing ourselves,
Hmm.
there's a perceived lack of emotional intelligence that men have in comparison to women. So you're able to perceive all kinds of things that could be wrong with him or going on with him rather, that you can sense because you have that immersive experience and the emotional intelligence that comes with it to see that. Most men, especially the men that I've worked with, have very little emotional intelligence, let alone the awareness of being able to perceive it outside of themselves, right? So
Right.
that's a big gap right there that just needs to be bridged. And so when I work with my clients, we have those conversations where I push them to just identify the emotions, right? It's not to stay in them, right? Like emotions and feelings are a compass to let us be aware of where we're at, what we're going through, and then what do we need to do to process them so we can move to ultimately what we desire, right? They're
Okay.
not meant to be
I
suppressed. They're not
see.
meant to be ignored, right?
I
But
can
this is
see
what
it.
we're taught. So it makes it really challenging. But going back to your original question, once I started to be in that practice and I was able to get the feedback from my wife that it was getting safer for me to express that, I noticed when I was talking with other men that they were also feeling the same way too. And then we were able to create a bond that way. So that was the
Okay.
first place where I was able to realize, like, this is not just me, this is other people.
Other
The
people
second
could feel this
place,
way too.
yeah. And the second place was in conversation with wives, because wives like you could see it and could feel it, right? And they would talk about it and they say, I don't know what to do about my husband. I can tell he's going through these things and I don't know what to do to support him or get it out of him. And I would often say, is like, it's not your job to get it out of him. It's his job to find a way to get it out in a way that
Mm,
is constructive
okay.
and supportive for him. Like, he may not know how to do those things. And that's why he needs support.
And that's why he needs the support that he needs. So I know we've touched a little bit about your background. We touched a little bit about dadpreneurship a little bit. So I want to dive in on these three questions for you. So the first one would be, what does a typical day look like for you when you're doing like your dad entrepreneurship, and how do you balance the demands of growing a business with being present from your family? And then lastly, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you think people have about dads who are entrepreneurs?
Yeah, great question. So my day currently looks a little bit different than even my normal days because I tore my Achilles playing pickleball a little bit over
Oh no.
almost 2 months ago. So I've been less mobile because of that. But it hasn't, it's changed what my day looks like, but I'm still able to be productive. So, I wake up, I'm usually waking up before my entire family because just having that space for me to just be by myself and
Mm-hmm.
with God, like, that's important. I learned that if I wake up with the rest of the family, I'm more likely to be triggered into reaction mode than response mode, where I can be more intentional with how I go about the day. Because as soon as they're up, there are needs that are to be met, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get time to take care of my needs so that I can be available to take care of theirs, right? And then I'll have breakfast with them. And then I start to do work, which for me is opening up my laptop. So this is something that's interesting for my daughter because, other people, they leave the house and they go to work, right? But for me, I just
Mm-hmm.
walk to my laptop and I open up or I go on my phone. And we homeschool and we don't do a lot of screens. And so it's at times it can be very confusing because here I am on the screen like many hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
but I oftentimes, and also because I'm visible, I look available, right? And so
Ah,
so
okay.
then the propensity of being interrupted dramatically increases, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
dad's on the couch, like I can ask him a question, which makes sense, right? But it's taught me a lot about setting boundaries. It's taught me a lot of being able to communicate, hey, like, this is when I'll be available and then I can answer any questions. But it's also created opportunities where it made me realize that because I used to think that she was interrupting me, but what it really was for bids of attention to create connection. So
Hmm.
to be more productive and responsive to that, as opposed to being reactive and saying, hey, I'm not available, I chose to include her in some of the things that I do with my clients inside of my business.
Mm-hmm.
So I love writing notes to clients and friends and just people that I spend time with. She loves to draw and she loves to just create beautiful things for people. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to hire you to be taking care of my cards. So I will write cards for my notes for my clients. You decorate them based on the occasion. So if it's a birthday, or you can color something, or if it's just a thinking of you, you can write something and you can sign your name too. You got to stamp it, put whatever card I have in there, and then you got to go mail it. And I pay her per card that she does, and she loves it, right? And
That
it's nothing
is
significant, like.
awesome. That is the
But it
cutest
gives
thing.
me time to be here, and while she's back there making cards, I have a little station for her so she knows where she
Mm-hmm.
can grab what she needs. And just her being in the office for me feels like I'm more connected to her. And I imagine she feels the same way too. And so it's teaching me as she's getting older and I'm doing more work where I can have some intersection where we can do some stuff together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not always just like, whatever. It's still quality time and we're
It's still
spending time
time,
and she's
that
asking
time together.
questions and
I love that.
Yeah,
I
and
need
that's
to
a luxury
try
that
to
I
do
have,
that
right?
more.
Because exactly. Now it's because I'm
Yeah.
here, right? It's better than being away 8 hours a day and then coming home, like, so now I'm seeing that me being here is actually a true luxury because she gets to see how I build a business, how I grow it, how I take care of my clients, and then it
Mhm.
gives her ideas for things that she can do, like the ice cream stand that she did today.
And we gotta talk about the ice cream stand because I need to implement this in my daughter's life, who's 7. Either an ice cream stand, a lemonade stand, some type of stand in her future
Yeah.
because she keeps thinking she lives in New York, and she doesn't live in New York, she lives in Texas. And so we gotta talk about the ice cream because I we talked about it a little bit before we started the podcast, but I want the listeners to hear about this because I love seeing when my daughter and her dad, they play their thing is playing video games. And
Mhm.
she watches him play Call of Duty, Madden 26, things of like that. And she tries to pique interest in like, Dad, I want to play. But we try to find other children appropriate games like Crash Bandicoot
Yeah.
and, like the old school
Mhm.
games that we had, just to play with. And
Yeah.
so when I see them together, I'm like, you are her twin. And he loves being a girl dad. And I try to,
It's the best.
with the role in my position is I try to shower as much as I can because like I said, I can see on the face where he's getting irritated or when I just know something's not right.
Mhm.
And he's like, "How do you know?" And I'm like, "I know you. Just we've been together since we were in our 20s, almost about 15, 16 years so far.
Yeah.
And so now since we've grown in our 20s, we're now growing in our 30s. And so it's kind of a
Mhm.
little bit more challenging in our 30s is because now we're still trying to learn more of okay, you're working 8 hours a day. Now I'm working 8 hours a day. We're trying to do that communication and reset back to I guess me and him, so to speak, without our daughter. We've had
Yeah.
our daughter the whole entire time. So when somebody asks, can they babysit or, her grandmother that we live with, she asked to take her to places. We're like, sure, fine. We still get that paranoia of what is she doing? Is she okay? And things like that. But to get that reconnection back with me and him, I think that's pretty cool.
And it's so important though, because you have to remember at the end of the day, it started with you two. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you two, like, so one of the biggest revelations I had was just like I'm the founder of my business, I'm the co-founder of my marriage. I'm the co-founder of my family. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, if I don't step up, if I drop the ball, it impacts the marriage, impacts the family, just like it would impact the business.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm a co-founder. I need to have board meetings with the other executives inside of the business of my family, inside the business of my marriage, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
has to be separate from the other team members, aka my child, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it allows us to, I think the number one thing it lets us know is that life can exist without a child because it used to
It can
and it's going to
That's
down
very
the
true.
road. So in between those two places, there needs to be some connected bridge that will make us feel like we're still together inside of it. And the
Mhm.
reason why I bring this up is I've worked with other clients who have become empty nesters. And because they were so focused on taking care of their kids, bringing them up, raising them, getting them out of college, where there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's why you have kids, right?
Right.
But they didn't do the part of spending time with themselves. And when they became empty nesters, that first week was very difficult for them because they thought they were having dinner with a stranger. They never took time in 18 years to like actually connect with their spouse. They
Mhm.
only saw them as the other parent.
The other parent, yeah.
So that part is super important. And then the other thing you said, which is so important too, is when you have time to be with each other, that's when you actually get time to like sync up and work on your communication together. It's
Mhm.
much harder to be a united front when you haven't had the time to connect and then you're faced with a situation with your kid.
Mhm.
And sometimes in that moment, you might feel like this needs to happen one way, and all of a sudden he might feel like, nope, I don't
It's
agree.
happened.
And then your kid sees this,
It's
and
for
then your
sure
kid's
has
like, oh,
happened to
word?
me. Mhm. It is for sure.
Right? Like I can kind of mess with this a little bit.
And then the kid is like, "Mom, Dad, are
Hmm.
you fighting? Or what's going on?" So I get that revolution so much because it took one time. Took one time for that to happen, and kind of like my daughter like looked at us, repeated, and was like, "Mom, Dad, are you having?" And I'm like, "No, it's just a conversation, a communication that we're having that we're trying to navigate through without I feel like there are dads that are single dads right now, that are don't
Hmm.
have that significant other. And I'm sure it's very, very, very hard to raise a child being a single parent. And so I want to get into a little bit about, because we have so many topics to cover, about the partnership and parenthood a little bit, and navigating into mental health and identity, which the mental health, I'm so looking forward to
Yeah.
having that conversation with you. But
Mm.
I know that being an entrepreneur sometimes can impact partnerships. And the question I have for you is, how has entrepreneurship shaped your relationship with your partner? What strategies do you and your partner use to stay either connected or support one another? Because, not everybody has that
Yeah.
tool to support one another. And then lastly, in that part, what advice would you give to dads or couples or anyone that's just growing a business and a family at the same time?
Yeah. So I'm fortunate where my wife is also an entrepreneur. So she understands the mentality and the lifestyle that comes with having your own business. So it's easier to communicate certain things because she understands it, right?
Mm,
We
okay.
have gone through a period where I had taken on the majority of the provision, right? The providing, and it allowed her to be more of a stay at home mom to homeschool our daughter, which was
Hmm.
an absolute blessing. And in that time, it's allowed her to decompress because she was running a huge business at the time, and she just got burnt out. And so just having that space to reset and recalibrate was huge. But the thing that has always allowed us to stay connected and on the same page has not only been just date nights. And we do regular date nights once a week, whether it's going out and having a babysitter or it's staying in. And when the kid's asleep, we watch a movie or we order out or we do all kinds of things, right? But we have that connected time together. But we also try to find other times throughout the week to sync up. So, for example, Mondays are a good day for us to sync up to kind of talk about, okay, what's coming up this week? Any major things going on that requires all of us as a family to be present to.
Hmm.
We ask each other what we need for support. So if I need additional time this week because I'm working on a project, I can ask for
Hmm.
that. And if there's an event that I need to go to connect or network or any meetings, I can let her know and just make sure that it's not affecting anything that she has going on with our daughter, whether it's any
Okay.
homeschooling activities or co-ops or drop-off programs. And we do that on a regular basis just to make sure that like we sync up. And then at night, that's really our precious time before bed is while we're decompressing from the day, we're
Hmm.
just sharing with each other. Oftentimes I'm usually the one holding the space for her so to decompress because she's with our daughter all day. And my daughter is a lot in the best way possible, but she's just a lot. She's a lot of energy. She wants to do all kinds of things. And she's constantly saying mom dozens, more like hundreds of times a day. Right. So, so there's a lot to decompress. And I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with that. But it allows us to connect in that way because even though I'm doing one thing and she's doing another, having
Hmm.
her share those things allows me to see what's going on in her world. And it makes me feel connected to what she's up to. And I know for her, sharing with me has her feel connected to me too. And we can tell when we don't feel connected, it's
Hmm.
because we haven't had the space to share in those ways. So we use that as a great point of awareness for us to see like, how connected we are. But those are just examples of tools that we actually use on a regular basis to support us in staying connected as husband and wife so that
Hmm.
we can show up really well as mom and dad.
And I like that. I think that's really, I like that a lot. I really, really, really like that a lot because sometimes it's very hard when it's like both parents are working, both parents have long work weeks, both parents are still trying to connect with one another. So at the end of the day, trying to reconnect maybe when the child does go to sleep at night can be beneficial. And not a lot of couples may not may not use that tool. I've heard a little bit about how I think I was watching something on YouTube one day where this couple they sleep in separate bedrooms. And I was
Mm.
like, how are you going to sleep? Like, how, what? You sleep in separate bedrooms just to like make sure you still exist in your spouse's life to be like, okay, we can coexist, but I'm going to sleep here, you're going to sleep there, and then we're going to be what? Like, I'm like, but that's how are you going to reconnect after that if you're not present with each other at this like the same time? So I thought that was kind of weird, but that's just my opinion. But I want to
I
get
mean,
into
it's different. Like
it is
it can,
different.
I would say it's strange, right? But I also think so. I'll give you maybe an inside look at how I could see that making sense, though, right? So unless you have boku bucks and can afford a bed or a mattress that has different temperatures, right? Like I tend to run really hot, so I like my room really cold. Wifey, not so much, right? I like blackout curtains. I wear a sleep mask. Like I like white noise. Wifey, not so much, right? And so
Right.
I don't like having a heavy blanket on top of me. Wifey does, right? I used to sleep with the CPAP machine. That just like was all bets were off there, right? So like sometimes we all we all have different ways in which we need quality sleep, right?
Right.
And it was never a consideration for us necessarily, but it did create difficulty in trying to figure out, like, how do we still stay connected if we have such different sleeps, like, lifestyles, you know? And so
Hmm.
I could see that being a practical solution. I just wonder what is their connected practice before they go into their different rooms to
And
sleep.
that's what I always have wondered because I'm like, you have been in a marriage for how many 30 years and you sleep separately, but then it's like some people are like, well, it works for me, and I'm like, it can't work for me because I know. Now the temperature thing, yes, I get hot. The leg has to be out, feet have to be out. Temperature thing, I
Mhm.
totally agree
Yeah.
with that. You gotta have it
Mhm.
cold.
I
You
need
gotta
that.
have it cold. You just have to.
Yeah.
I even go to the extra mile on having a ceiling fan and a fan on top of it being cold. So you
Okay.
can only, you can only imagine. But I do want to get into about the mental health for dads. I think that
Yeah.
it's not often talked about enough. It needs to be talked about more in each present conversation that a man has. Because, we often say, oh, it's Women's Day or women's this or women's that, or uh, what about women's mental health? But you don't hear about men's mental health, and being that dadpreneur can come with a lot of stress sometimes. So the questions I have for you is how do you personally take care of your mental health, and what roles do or does in the community or brotherhood play for dadpreneurs? I had asked a question in a previous episode about who is your village and where does your village come from? Because you can also often hear about a woman talk about, well, I have a village and it takes a village to raise a child, which is true. It does take a village to raise a child.
Mhm.
We've heard that all our lives. But who is that village that you go to? And what do you wish more dads knew about giving themselves permission to truly slow down, ask for help, or just give themselves some rest? One of the biggest things I have for myself is I hate asking for help because I feel like
Mhm.
I'm a Pisces. So I feel like if I ask for help,
You just swim your own way.
just swim your own way and figure it out. So I would love to hear your input about mental health, the identity behind it. We can even dive in a little bit about racism if needed, but it does need to
Yeah.
be talked about. So I want to hear a little bit about that from you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I shared before, I mean, I struggled with alcohol and drug abuse, and so my mental health was not in a great shape many, many, many years ago. And it was because I wasn't aware of the tools that could help me. I wasn't aware that I could use those tools, and I wasn't taught how to use them, right? Because why would I? Right?
Hmm.
That wasn't how I was raised, you know?
Right.
I came from a Jamaican background. My parents are from
Okay.
Jamaica, and this just wasn't the thing that was taught in our family. It was just buck up and keep going, for better or for worse, right? That was just what it was. And
Right.
I didn't have that ability to understand how to process my emotions. And because of that, the default emotion was resentment. It's the only emotion that I knew that I had when it came to my emotional spectrum, right? Because I was emotionally illiterate. So I didn't know anything else but anger. But in my time of sobriety, I've learned that there's so many different ways where I can process and like get this out. So one of the things that I rely on is working out. It is a massive stress release tool. If I am
Okay.
upset or I have something on my mind that's stressing me out, a great pump for me really,
Mhm.
really helps. It is tough right now for me not to be able to work out the way I want to because of my Achilles injury, but it is something that is very important to me. And because I don't have that right now, I lean on other tools such as meditation. There's no such thing as being bad at meditation. I think if you just allow yourself a small bit of time just to be quiet and hear what's going on in your head and being willing
Mhm.
to let those thoughts go, you're meditating. If you're going out for a walk, you're meditating. If you're sitting there quietly eating dinner, you're meditating, right? Like
Okay, I like the
you
word
don't,
meditating.
meditation doesn't look a certain way as
Mhm.
long as you're willing to just be with yourself inside of your thoughts and letting them go. That is a form of meditation, right? But I think that's great. If you have thoughts or feelings that are prevalent, journaling for me was a game changer because it made me put what I was feeling or experiencing to words that then built my literacy and then as a result built my intelligence. And so once I
Okay.
was able to key in on how I was feeling, what was triggering me, what was the story I was creating because of that trigger? Is that story even true? Is that even what I want? What do I really want? What would
Mhm.
life look like if I did have what I want? What's the story that I can use instead that could help me get what I want? Like all these
Mm.
questions started to come up for me that allowed me to process things in a way that allowed me to take even heavier emotions like anger, guilt, even shame, and turn it into something that I can actually use for good. And so when I talk about the importance of men expressing their feelings, I'm not saying men by expressing their feelings need to be soft or weak as is often portrayed. It's about using the emotions that we have as fuel and energy, but done in a productive way that allows us to become better men. And
Like
we
doing
can't
it
hit
in a
that
more
next level
positive and
of who we are as
constructive way.
men. Exactly. And
Okay.
no matter how much we grind, no matter how much we push ourselves, we will never get to that next level of what we can get to if we don't harness and utilize all of our emotions and learn how to use them in a productive way. Like that is true, full stop. And
I believe that.
that is where I feel like getting support and having community of other men is so
Mhm.
important. And whether it's finding for me like other black men or it's me finding other entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs who have kids, right?
Mhm.
Like it's so important to find those communities to find so you know that there are people like you who necessarily might even look like you who
Mhm.
are also going through the same things as you do so that you don't feel alone. And when you see other people in that community who are maybe a couple steps ahead of you, it lets you know that you can also get a couple steps ahead. And it gives you strength and hope and the opportunity to ask for support from that very person to guide you through what you're going through. Because oftentimes, being an entrepreneur is a very lonely experience. It's a very lonely experience. A way to mitigate that is by being around other entrepreneurs like yourself. So that way you don't
Mhm.
feel like it's just you going through this, or you have this story in your mind that you think that this is only happening to you, because that's just not true.
Because 9 times out of
And
10, we
so the
often think
stigma
like
around
that.
community is yeah,
We do think like that.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I
Yeah, like when we face adversity or yeah,
I agree. We often feel like it's a lonely place, especially right now what we're dealing with in our economy. And I'm going to go there. I'm going to touch it there because I feel like a lot of
okay.
Black women and a lot of Black men have so many challenges that we'll revert back to that we have to go 10 steps further ahead. And it didn't take for me to understand, it took for me to understood, it didn't hit home for me, I think, until about my mid 20s, early 30s, where I would go to work or see something happening, and I'm not saying turn a blind eye to it, but speak about it and speak up about it, you know? And in previous episodes, I've had amazing, amazing guests come on here and really advocate. I didn't even know people would even do this. I thought people were just going to be like, nope, not going to do a topic of conversation of this. But to advocate and say, Black women need more help with this, or Black men need more help with that. And these are other ethnicities coming out and saying that, yo, Black women and Black men need the support mentally or physically, and they shouldn't be at the bottom of the title pool, and they should be uplifted. So, like I stated, each guest that has been on this podcast have really been behind me with advocating for Black women and Black men that are not Black women and not Black women and not Black men. And I fully appreciate that, because more than anything, it takes time for sometimes maybe not somebody to speak up about that, you know? So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the truth is, like, we need as much help as we possibly can as a community, and I would offer, like, be willing to pursue whatever help is available. It may not be the best, but it's better
Mm-hmm.
than nothing. And I also would offer, like, yes, like, things aren't being perceived, things aren't put in like the best position right now. Like, things aren't looking that great.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, as a coach, this is me coming as a coach, I would also say, do not allow that to trigger your victimhood and make you feel like you're helpless to what is going on. Like, you are still a sovereign person who can pursue the opportunities that are available to you, even if they are limited. And as long as you're willing to continue to do your best, it
Mm-hmm.
will work out. Like, I've seen it unfold, and I am a personal example of that. Like, just be willing. And the reason why I'm saying it this way is because whenever I allowed myself, especially when I was in my late 20s, and I
Mm-hmm.
allowed myself to be in the victimhood of, like, this is happening to me because I look a certain way, or I'm dressed a certain way, or I have hair a certain way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that is me now giving up my power to choose what happens because of who I am. Right. And I
Right.
realize that, like, I don't want that. Like, there's certain factors that in this world that I can't control, and I got to deal with that. I got to accept that. But there
Mm-hmm.
are certain factors that I can control. Right? I can work on my intelligence. I can work on my communication skills. I can work on my networking. I can work on asking for help. I can work on seeking support and being willing to say that I need help, and realize that that's not a point of weakness. That's actually a point of strength. Because I've noticed the most successful people that I've gotten to work with, that I've gotten to know, and I've known a lot of pretty prominent, successful people. The reason why they got successful, especially the
Mm-hmm.
ones who are kind of homemade, they ask for help. They ask for help. And
And it's okay to ask for
most of
help.
the
It
time,
really
it
is.
took them their 50th, 51st, 99th, 100th, 150th ask for help to actually receive it then. And that relentlessness was something that was really inspiring me to hear from. Like, I never met someone who had asked for support or asked for, like, help and was told yes right away, depending on, like, the kind of support you're looking for, right? But, like,
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, it wasn't something that was just given out. They had to be persistent. And with that, when I learned that, what I took from that is, when you are so clear on who you are and the value you bring into the world, and you believe that so fully that, like, God has
Mm-hmm.
kind of made this your assignment, it will happen as long as you are willing to push yourself to make that a reality. And the caveat there is, if you allow yourself to be a victim, then there's no chance for that reality to come true. So
That's true.
this is why I say that support is so important, because support in this world is the
Mm-hmm.
only way that is going to help you ascend to the level that you want to. You will not be able to do something on your own and think it's going to work out in today's world. It's not going to happen. Those days are gone. That generation has passed.
Yeah,
Like,
they're long gone.
for you to get to the level you want to be, you need support.
And I totally, totally agree. So, Thomas, this has been such an eye opener conversation. It really has. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom and giving us a peek into a real life of a dadpreneur. That should be like real life of dads or something. Bravo need to pick up a series on that. Anyways, one more thing I would like to ask, and I've been asking recently of my guests, is there any advice or a good quote that you would like to give to a new dad or a girl dad that is listening, that is possibly considering entrepreneurship or going through something mentally in general, or just want to have their week end on a good note? Can you share something with them? All right, Thomas. So, for someone listening who is a new dad or maybe a girl dad, possibly considering like entrepreneurship, what are three key practices you recommend for keeping harmony between work and family life?
Yeah. So the one thing I want guys to understand is that principles don't discriminate. So if you have found success in one area of your life, if you are to
Mhm.
understand the principles that make that success work, chances are you can apply it to entrepreneurship. You can apply it to your marriage. You can apply it to being a dad. And so keep everything the same. And what I mean by that is don't have you know, a dad version of you and a business version of you, because that's where the identity split and the guilt comes from, is the in between of those two identities.
Okay.
Have systems and develop systems that work for you in all areas. We talked about date nights. We talked about regular points of contact of communication between you and your wife. We talked about,
Hmm.
15 minutes of undivided attention for your kid a day. I mean, obviously give more if you can, if you have more, but like just having it be undivided, how that can be a thing. All of those
Hmm.
are strategies that can be put into systems that if you do regularly will allow you to feel like you're showing up at a great, consistent level as a dad, as a husband, as a business person. If you are looking to enter into the world of entrepreneurship, I think it's vital to make sure that you are prepared to answer some specific questions, not just yourself, but also if you have a spouse, your spouse. Like, what's going to be required of each other by entering this entrepreneurship?
Okay.
What do you need to make it work? What are goals that you have for yourself in this entrepreneurship? How much time are you going to give yourself inside of this to see if you can make it work? What are some ways to keep yourselves connected, not only to each other, but to the goal that you two are establishing together, right? These are all questions that need to be not only communicated, but constantly reinforced, especially when you guys are in the deep end of entrepreneurship, when the focus is more time on the business than it is being at
Hmm.
home, making sure that you guys are synced up and know what you guys are planning for. That's why I said it was such a big benefit for me to have a wife who was already an entrepreneur, because she
Hmm.
understood intrinsically what it was going to take for me to go all in building this thing to what it gets to be today. So have that conversation for sure. And then I would say, at the end of the day, there are more things that are caught than taught. So no matter what happens in your business, no matter what happens in your marriage, do your best. And this is in my personal opinion, if you can just do everything you can to show up to be the dad that you can be, especially coming from a girl dad, you have to remember that you are the role model for all relationships that she will have, if that has masculine presence. And I'm not just talking about a boyfriend or a future husband.
Right.
I'm talking about a potential boss. I'm talking about a
Hmm.
teacher, a
A
mentor,
coworker.
a coworker, any male
Hmm.
relationships, a coach if she plays sports, right? Like all relationships with other men, she will define them through you. So if there's any great legacy that you can leave behind, it's by showing her how to have a healthy relationship with other men, by you being the example of how to have a relationship with you.
That is awesome. So, Thomas, this has been such an eye opening conversation today. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom and giving us a peek into the real life of dadpreneur. Before we wrap up, where can people find you and learn more about your coaching?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much everywhere on social media at the Thomas Edwards Jr. You can go to thomasedwardsjr.com and you can see about me and my story and all the different things I have to offer. And I also have this quiz that speaks to what could be the silent killer behind your success. I use that phrase in
Hmm.
jest because it's just one of those things that, once again, once you understand what part of you is holding you back, it can
Hmm.
actually become your greatest asset to get to that next level. And so you can take that quiz at thomasedwardsjr.com/imposter quiz, and you can find out.
I might have to take that quiz for myself.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Interesting. Well, thank you again for being here and for the work you're doing for dads everywhere. To the listeners, if you are enjoying today's episode, be sure to share it with a dadpreneur you know. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Balance Boss Mom podcast. Thomas, again, thank you for being here. I hope everyone has enjoyed listening and seeing this YouTube. You can also follow me on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, pretty much anywhere you listen to. And you can also follow me and like and subscribe. And please leave a lovely review on YouTube as well, where you can find me. Until next time, everybody, stay safe and be the best girl dad version that you can possibly be. And bye, guys.